In this video, we're going to talk about creating a hazard script in Unity. This video is going to be, for the most part, pretty short, but at the end, we're going to have an optional section for if you already watched the stats video and that's where you're coming from. But also there's going to be a few things in this, I'll try to take some of them out, or there's going to be a few things in this scene that were from the other video. I'm just going to move the player away and hope you can ignore it. Pretend it's an empty scene. All you have is some sort of player. This could be the side platforming movement player. This could be the top-down movement player. It could be a customly made player. This code will be very universal. First thing we're going to do is we're going to create an object for our player to be hazardous against, like something for it to touch or whatever. We'll make a spike, we'll say. In our empty quote-unquote scene, we're going to do plus and then 2D object, sprites, triangle, that is spike. And I'll add a few more. I'll hold down, moving it around it now. Holding down Control locks it to a grid, and then pressing D will paste it or duplicate it, or if you highlight over. We'll say some right there. We'll say some right there. Again, I'm holding it down and pressing D every time I want to duplicate it. Now, each of these spikes needs one thing to actually interact with the player, a box collider. So I'm going to select all of them and then click add component and type in box collider 2D. Now, this is awful. If the player touches the actual corner here, they're going to get hit by the spike. So I lied. Let's not do box collider. Let's do a polygon collider, which is going to be really annoying to set up. I'm going to click on one of these guys. Where'd it go? This one here. And I'm going to hit the edit collider button. The collider by default is actually set to the shape of the triangle. But in a lot of these games, you kind of want to be nice to the player. You kind of want to make it smaller than the thing you're actually trying to hit, because it ends up being a more fun experience, believe it or not. So I'm going to move this inside a little bit. Just a little bit. Just enough to where the player doesn't feel unfair. Doesn't feel unfair when the player does something and hits it when they don't mean to. Okay, so we keep it like that. I'm gonna copy this component by right-clicking and click copy component. All the points are relative to the object itself, so I should be able to paste these over the other triangles and have it copy. So I'm gonna right-click and click paste component values. And each of these triangles has the correct hitbox now. Okay, now that these are in the hitbox layer, I'm also going to go into the sprite renderer and change the color to red, just to show how evil and dangerous these spikes are. And then we're going to go ahead and add our hazard script. So if you haven't yet, you should be creating a scripts folder for all your scripts. There's two ways to create a script in Unity. Right click, create, mono behavior script. Or with your object selected, you can click add component and type in the name of a component that doesn't exist yet, like hazard. This is not good because this will just put in your assets folder when you probably want to go in your scripts folder. Or if you're very well organized, each person has their own folder in your team. So there might be multiple scripts folders. In my scripts folder here, I'm gonna right click, create, mono behavior script, and call it hazard. And then once this finishes loading, I'm going to put it on all the spikes at once. Shift select your best friend. Click triangle, hold down shift, press triangle at the bottom. They're all selected. Now I can drag in this hazard script down here and apply it to everything at once. Every single one of these has a hazard script now. Let's double click our hazard script. And we're going to make this do its thing. So by default, ignore the other scripts. We're going to make this just teleport the player back. Or no, I guess we'll go through three different solutions. We'll say destroy the player for one, teleport the player back for another, and then take away health for a third. Let's get rid of void start and void update. We don't need either one. I mentioned in another video, I mentioned this one too. Void start code happens once at the very beginning of your game. It's very good for setting things up, like putting things in the right position, getting components, setting people's health, stuff like that. Things that should only happen once at the very beginning. Then you have void update. that runs every single frame while the game is running. And it's good for things like updating health bars, updating physics, moving players that are following other things like AI, for example, stuff like that. In another script, we made our own custom void, move and run. Move happened whenever we used the left stick or the WASD keys. Run happened when we pressed the run button. In our spawn hitbox script, the attack function happened and ran this code every time we clicked or pressed the enter key, because that was the attack button by default for some reason. In our hazard script, we want to write code that's going to run whenever we touch this collider. Now to do that, we're going to use on collision enter 2D. But before you do that, you'll notice there's a bunch of other ones. There's on collision enter 2D, exit 2D, stay, and stay 2D. But there's also on trigger enter 2D, exit 2D, stay, and stay 2D, which means that there's a total of 12 collision functions. And of all 12, you have to use the one correct one in each case. So I'll show you the difference, first of all, between the ones that say trigger and the ones that say collision. So when an object is given a collider of any sort, things will bump into it and they won't be able to move past it because it has physical collision. That's what a collider does. But sometimes you might want to register that you touch the thing without actually physically touching it and like stopping when you hit it. For example, like a checkpoint flag in Mario definitely needs to know Mario touched it, but it shouldn't physically stop him from moving. He should pass right through the guy. So when you have a collider, there's this little box that says is trigger with a check mark. This is a Boolean. If this is true, you'll pass right through the thing, but you can still write code to see if you touched it. And if it's false, you'll stop when you hit the thing, and you can still write code to see if you touched it. So if this is set to false, you're going to use one of the ones that says on collision. But if it's set to true and you pass through it, you can use one of the ones that says on trigger. So that's the difference between collision and trigger. Next, we got the ones that say 2D versus the ones that don't say 2D. In this case, we're going to use no trigger. So I'm going to keep it how it is. So we're going to use one of the on collisions. So the ones that say 2D are meant for any sort of 2D collider. The ones that don't say 2D are meant for any sort of 3D collider. This is a 2D polygon collider, so we're going to use one of the ones that says 2D. So now it's either on collision enter 2D, exit 2D, or stay 2D. On collision enter 2D happens the frame that you touch the thing. On collision exit 2D happens, or let me be more generic. The ones that say enter happens the frame that you start touching the thing. The ones that say exit runs the frame that you stop touching the thing. And on collision stay happens every frame while you're touching the thing. Kind of like an update function, but only while you're touching it. In this case, we're going to use on collision enter 2D because we have it not set as a trigger, so it's collision. We want it to happen as soon as we touch the thing, so it's enter. And it's a 2D collider, so it's 2D. Again, there's 12 of these functions. It's really important to know the difference. If you understand the difference between collision and trigger, enter, stay, and exit, and 2D versus not 2D, aka 3D, then you should be able to use the right one each time. Remember, use Visual Studio's autocomplete. Don't try to type it in manually every time. You will make mistakes. So in here is where we're going to write our code. We're going to write very simple code first just to destroy the player. We'll notice that this function actually has a parameter. This is called, it's like an input to the function. It's giving us some context. In this case, the context is, what did we hit? And that's what collision is. It's what we hit. So I'm going to type in debug.log collision.gameObject.name. This is going to print the name of what we hit to the console. If you don't know yet, what debug.log does is inside of Unity, next to your project window, there's this console window, and important information gets put here. By writing debug log, we can put our own information there. So if this hazard script is on our spike, then collision is what touches the spike. In this case, this should print the name of our player. if this script was on an enemy and we touch the enemy, it would still print the name of our player because it's what we're touching. But if this script was on our player and we touch the spike, it would print the spike's name. Because again, this is whatever the thing that has the script is touching. So let's try it out. So our spikes here, nothing prints because they're not touching each other. But if I got them a little bit too close for comfort, they'd start maybe printing some messages. Not yet. Okay, we'll see. Let me move towards one of them. We'll see it says player because the player hit the spike. I guess I hit it twice. Yeah, so not good. Kind of ow. Our player is kind of spinning out of control. Let's fix it real quick. On the player object, under rigid body 2D, under constraints, let's click freeze rotation Z so it doesn't rotate like that anymore. Anyways, that's a little sidetrack. It prints the name of the player, so we know we're touching the player. Now that we know we're touching the player, we know what we can do to the player. So let's try one option. Let's try destroy collision.gameObject. This will destroy whatever we touch. In this case, the player. In case we is the spike. So let's see. When the player now touches the spike, they die and disappear immediately, which is not what we want. We want their health to go down so we can reflect it in our health bar. We can have a more interesting game. So in our health, instead, let's do the TryGetComponent thing we talked about in the other video. What TryGetComponent does is, so we have regular getComponent. Regular getComponent is used when you know the object has that. For example, if I use getComponent collider 2D for the spike, we know the spike has collision. Like there's not going to be a spike without collision. But the code that we're about to write is going to assume the player has a stats component, which is not something you ever want to do. So we're going to put it inside of this TryGetComponent, so we're not assuming it. So to do with TryGetComponent is you say if, and then you say collision dot try game object dot TryGetComponent, and then say out stats and add curly brackets. It's a little confusing, but this if statement is saying only run the code that we're about to put in here if the game object that we're colliding with, the player, has a stats component. And then what are we going to do when we have that stats component? We're going to say stats.currentHealth. This is a float. This is a decimal value. To change a decimal value by a certain amount, you can either use plus equals to make it go up by a certain amount, or minus equals to make it go down by a certain amount. We're going to say minus equals, and then we could say 5, for example. We'll say it does 5 damage. But let's not do this. 5 is an example of what we call a magic number in programming. It's, despite the name, not a good thing. From this, you can pretty much tell 5 is how much damage the spike does, but it's still not very descriptive. We can do better. We can instead make a public float called damage, and then have our spike say stats.currentHealth minus equals damage. What this lets us do is this hazard has a float, which again is a decimal number, that's public, which means we can see it in the Unity inspector. This will make it so we can customize the damage without having to change our code. Let's give it a default value by saying equals 2. Now, whenever we add a hazard component, the default damage will be 2. We'll see in the inspector here, for each of these hazards, the default damage was 0 because it reloaded the code before I typed the code in, the 2 in. But like, if I type in 5 here, the damage it does is 5. It's only 2 if it's new to the object. For example, if I reset this component, you'll see it resets to 2. Anyways, these spikes all deal, we'll do 2 damage, and it only does so if the object we're colliding with has the stats component. Let's try it out. Okay, so we touch the spike, we notice we lose a little bit of health. This is from the stats video. You should watch if you haven't already. It does exactly what we want. It's perfect. and our stats component still destroys the object when it runs out of health, because that's what we wrote it to do, which is for the enemy or for the player, because it's very generic. This is pretty much all we need to do for the video. I said I was going to do like a version of the hazard that teleports you back. That requires extra scripting that's kind of I think irrelevant. So if you want to do that, just ask me. I'll show you how to do it. Anyways, that's everything for the video then. Thank you for watching. I hope that these videos have been very enlightening for you so far. I hope that even experienced people have gotten some information out of these. And I will see you in the next one.